The story begins with a young man named Akagame Mitsu. When he was 5 years old, he listened to his father's advice. His father wanted him to avoid living alone. The boy does not understand the meaning of these words, so his father started explaining this to him. He said that many people are better than one person. So he started teaching his son the importance of having many loved ones. The boy was looking at his father with admiration. Suddenly a car came, but before he got up, his son asked him where he was going to go. But Al was smiling with a haughty face and said that he had decided to make all the women in this world happy. And indeed the boy was listening to this speech with admiration. The problem is that he was encouraging him to continue on this wonderful path. A few years later, Akemetsu became an adult. He was sleeping at his desk but suddenly woke up after seeing a dream full of girls. He was late for class, so he quickly went to go to school by taking the train. But there is something strange in this young man. He always put the book in his face while reading. He looks like a person who has a mental illness. He went to school like every day, but he always remembers his father's words. Then he came home, but he found his friends looking at the girls during sports class. They asked him to join them, but he can't because he has some business. Another friend asked him to come to an acquaintance party. When he heard the invitation, he became trembling from stress. He began to shout at the top of his voice saying that his life never needs women. The girls ran away from fear when they heard Ikemetsu's words. Then he went to the store where he works part-time. This store is called Unity Store. The manager began to hint that young people at this time should be on a date, but the boy said that he would be single all his life. The director does not give up. He reminded him of his father's actions when he was young. But suddenly Ikemetsu became very angry and said that he was never like his father. When on his way home he saw a car that brought back his memories with his father. He does not know how he admired his scum father when he was 5 years old. He was subjected to a lot of embarrassment because of the reputation of his family, the Akagame family. People despised this family because of his father's actions, so he decided to stay away from girls all his life in order to return his family's reputation. He wants to erase all the mistakes that his father made. He wants to live a normal life by completing his studies and working in a guest job at a fixed price all his life. But he does not know what he will do after achieving these goals. But at that moment, a big bag of rice was flying right towards him. This bag hit Ikemetsu where it caused him to fall off the cliff. Then he crashed into the wall. He doesn't know what's happening. Then a girl comes and apologizes to him because she is the owner of that bag. But the boy does not speak. He was shocked. The girl is worried, so she approached him in order to check on his condition. But to no avail, Ikemetsu is not talking. He was just staring at her. She decided to call an ambulance because she thinks he is injured. But suddenly he ran away and said that he was fine and did not need to go to the hospital. She wanted him to stop, but he was very nervous. He was upset that this girl had talked to him. He really was annoyed that he had broken the rules on which he relies in life. No girls forever. He was screaming all night because of that incident. But there is another thing going on in his mind, and that is that the girl he met by chance in the evening was very taxing. The next day, when his friends were walking by the sports field, they watched their lonely friend Ikemetsu watching the match between the girls. They are shocked because this is never his nature. So they invited him to go to the acquaintance party a second time. It was a surprise. He agreed to go. He became not interested in his work and studies as usual. This is very strange when one girl changes the life of an isolated young man through a situation that happened by chance. And this actually happened with the young Ikemetsu. Since that day, his life has become completely different. He goes to clubs with his friends every night for a few drinks. He only thinks about girls. Also, the manager fired him from his job because he was absent for many days. Studying was the last thing he thought about because he was so threatened with failing at school. And suddenly, while he is stuck in his thoughts, a call comes to him from his friends in order to go to an acquaintance's party. At first he said that he would come quickly, but suddenly he slammed the phone against the wall. He believes that the curse of the Akagame family has infected him, so he decides to quit and stop this negative thinking by reprogramming his mind anew. And he actually went to his uncle, who had been a monk for years. He borrowed his own clothes. He believes that distancing oneself from the desires of life is the best way to train it. And he actually went to one of the temples. His determination was strong in order to quit all the negative things that might cause him to fail in his working life. He came to the door and began to ask permission in order to enter, but no one was there, so he began to shout at the top of his voice for anyone to come to open the door of the temple. And actually a person came and opened the gate, but a big surprise, it was the girl he met earlier on the street. He does not know what this girl is doing here, especially since this place is a temple, means there are no women. She asked him why he came, but he closed the door in her face, so she became angry and opened the door by force. But she noticed that this person is a priest, so she quickly went in order to dress respectably. He completely collapsed. He was crawling because of stress, and yet, despite all this, he began to think that this girl is a fake copy that his mind has created. But he was wrong, because this girl came back to him again. She introduced herself to him. Her name is Aoba Izuki. He made his escape again, but this time he tripped over rocks and crashed into a tree. She became worried about him, so she decided to go to him quickly, but he saw something serious that led to his losing his mind. He can't stand it, so he said he loves her and also asked her to marry. She got crazy because of Ikemetsu's actions. After they entered the temple, she served him some tea, but he was surprised because this place doesn't look like a temple. He should meet the high priest for his exam before being allowed to join. But this girl told him that the priest is not here at the moment. Also, she thought that Ikemetsu will arrive tomorrow, so she is not ready to receive him. The situation becomes more complicated when she asks him about his interests, because he thought that all this was a test in order to join the temple. He doesn't know what he would do if this was a test, because he ruined everything when he asked Aoba to get married. Inevitably, he would definitely fail. Then he started bleeding, so she asked him what was happening, but he said that he was trying to overcome worldly desires, nothing more and nothing less. As a result, he asked her to let him go to the bathroom. She said that he was outside to the left of the gate. When he was going to the bathhouse, he was fascinated by the beauty of the garden belonging to the temple. But suddenly he heard the sound of a cat inside the well, so he went there in order to save her. But when he was helping her out, she jumped on him, as a result of which he fell into the well. But the cat managed to get out of there with ease. Meanwhile, Aoba was making a call with her friend at work. She told her that the person who should come tomorrow had come this day. And also she did not want an arranged marriage, because the person who visited her had asked her to get married. She is shocked that the person who was going to visit her and marry her is still next to her friend. She is nervous because she does not know this young man who came to her today. Then her sister Tsukuo came, so Aoba asked for help from her in order to get rid of the ghost who came to visit her. She means Ikemetsu by ghost. So Tsukuo thought that her sister was joking with her no more and no less, but meanwhile, Ikemetsu comes to them. He was asking for help in a terrifying way. Of course, the girls began to scream with fear and horror. Tsukuo was so scared that she lost consciousness and fell to the ground. Aoba wanted her sister to immediately escape from the ghost, but she was collapsed. He kept following them, saying he wants an ambulance now, but the girls think he is a really evil ghost. He got more angry and said he is just a human asking for help. But suddenly he meets another girl who was carrying that cat that fell into the well a little while ago, but she also lost consciousness, so he prevented her from falling to the ground. Meanwhile, there are some girls in one of the rooms talking about things related to religion and life, but this girl named Mia heard some noise outside, so she went outside to make sure. But suddenly Ikemetsu comes quickly and bumps into her. She doesn't know what a man is doing in this place, so she screams louder. But Kagura was laughing, saying that this situation is very funny. The girls hide because they are afraid of that ghost, and after a few moments of a pen appearing in front of them, Tsukuo does not know why he is chasing Aoba specifically. Aoba said that she will beat him in order to make sure whether he is really a ghost or not. Then Ikemetsu started moving towards them, so she took a karate pose and actually punched him in the face. The poor guy lost consciousness from the force of the blow. But at the same time, he was saying that this girl is very taxing. When he came to his senses, he found himself in front of all the girls. This girl named Kiki was interested in the character of this young man. Aoba also found out that all these events were a misunderstanding because of his uncle. She also apologized for her stupid actions. Then he found out the identity of this place. This place is a school for training nuns. So he became shocked because his uncle sent him to this place by mistake. But Kiki calmed the situation and said that she would allow him to train here in order to become a priest, but for a short period of time. The sisters are complaining about this decision because this place is for girls, so a strange young man cannot be allowed in here. But Kiki said that this is great because Ikemetsu will do all the cleaning work for free. But the girls don't want to accept this thing. Mia pulled out her sword in order to attack him, but Kagura blocked her. Tsukuo also said that this man is not respected, so Kiki gave him a crazy test. He became bleeding as a result, but he decided to go and leave this temple in order to avoid problems. But before leaving, he said that he would not forget the first meeting between him and Aoba. He has already left the place, but unfortunately it is too late. At this time there is no public transport. He was desperate, so he decided to sleep at the bus station. He really does not know what he will do now that he has left that temple. But in those miserable moments, the girl Ayaba comes to him. She wants him to return to the temple because there are many empty rooms where he can spend this night. Then she apologized to him a second time and said that the topic of marriage was a heavy joke. But he became shy and said that his name was Akagame Mitsu. She also identified herself again, after which they returned to the temple. But surprisingly, the girls find out that this young man is from the Akagame family. Everyone started beating him because his father borrowed a sum of 20 million from the temple, after which he disappeared completely. And now the girls want Akimetsu to pay that money. The girls are looking for a way, and they have already found a solution. Akimetsu will pay that money with his body. He is shocked because he does not know the real meaning of this solution. Everyone returned to normal when they found out that Akagame would be working all day at the temple for a very long time. The girls started making fun of her, so she cut the rock in front of her in half in order to force everyone to keep quiet. Then she asked Akagame to take him on a tour around the temple in order to find out the places. And of course he was okay because he felt so excited that his eyes were shining. And she actually took him to the statue of the temple. But Akagame was complaining because this statue is made with adhesive tape. She became sad and said that the temple is in bankruptcy, so he began to feel guilty and said that he would work hard to pay off his father's debts. As a result, she began to look at him with admiration, thanked him and held his hand. But meanwhile, the rest of the girls are spying on them from behind the door. They notice that Akagame and Ayaba are too compatible with each other, so they met with all the girls for planning. The plan is to get Akagame out of the temple once and for all by setting a trap in order to get him into trouble, as a result of which they will expel him from the temple. The way to do this is through temptation. The girls began to choose the girl who would perform that role, and of course the choice was on Ayaba Tsukuyo, who is the sister of Ayaba Yuzuki. She was initially reluctant because this would ruin her reputation, but nevertheless she agreed to carry out the plan. Because everyone wanted her to, and there is no other solution because she is the only one who wants to expel Akagame badly. Everyone was motivating her for that. The next day, at 5 o'clock in the morning, Akagame woke up from sleep quickly because of his strong desire to become a priest. He was so excited that he jumped out of bed like a superhero. He cleaned up the place very quickly. Then he went to the kitchen to prepare the food. He really cut the vegetables in a professional way like a professional cook. But in the meantime, Izuki comes to him in order to say morning greetings to him. But she was wearing pajamas, and as a result Akagame was shocked by that. The food had burned because of her. Then she left, but he became very disappointed and desperate because he was looking at Izuki with admiration. Meanwhile, Tsukuyo was monitoring all his actions. She was thinking of a good way in order to trap him. A few moments later he finished cooking, so he asked all the girls to come immediately to the breakfast table. Everyone came, but Tsukuyo was happy because she thought that the food that Akagame had prepared was very bad, and as a result, she would criticize him and expel him from the temple. But it was a surprise. She was shocked because this food is very tasty. Akagame was a skilled cook. She was devastated, but she wished she could eat this food every day. Then she approached him and said that she had other orders that he should carry out now. And she actually dressed him in special clothes for training. In fact, these clothes are very durable, as a result of which he will feel very hot as hell. But he didn't feel anything. He was acting in a very normal way. Then she asked him to clean up, but he had done all these works before. She was surprised because he cleaned everything. All the places were clean. Even from the bathroom, graves and roses, all were shining from the abundance of freshness. She doesn't know what's going on. This man was a professional in everything. So she took him to the computer in order to see the private data on matters related to the financial management of this temple. She thought he was stupid in scientific matters, but unfortunately for her, he was very professional in this matter because he discovered all the errors in the calculations. These are errors that even the girls will not be able to detect and fix. So he taught her about how to fix mistakes of this kind. She was acting like crazy because she took him to one of the places in front of the temple. She brought a giant pipe and poured water over his head. Kiki apologized to him because this training should be under a waterfall, but there is no waterfall, so she did this. He was also excited that he was concentrating like a professional kung fu player. In fact, Tsukuyo was doing this in order to annoy Akagame no more and no less. But Akagame believed everything Tsukuyo said, so he was doing all the services in a very serious way. He was doing meditation under the cold waterfall. The water was really very cold, but still he was doing endurance. There is no pain, there is no cold. Meanwhile, Izuki comes from school. She was shocked by this thing happening in front of her. But when Akagame saw her in her school uniform, he began to feel the strength and warmth. The cold and pain that he had been feeling a little while ago has completely disappeared. This is enlightenment. But even though he was raising his hand up out of a lot of happiness and enthusiasm, Tsukuyo was feeling hopeless because there was nothing affecting this creature called Akagame. And Kiki actually looked at her in a strange way and said that there is only one way to expel Akagame from the temple. And now they will implement the plan that they had previously prepared at the meeting. He went to take a shower in order to get rid of fatigue and exhaustion as a result of working all day. But Tsukuyo comes. He doesn't understand what the hell is happening here. After a few moments, a situation and misunderstanding happened, because there are some things that fell on the girl's head, but Akagame comes and saved her. But in the meantime, Yuzuki comes. She has completely misunderstood the matter, so she asked him to leave immediately because of the anger she was feeling at that moment. And already he has left the temple. The girls are happy that the plan was a success. Also, they have come to praise Tsukuyo because she executed everything in a wonderful way. But she was ashamed and remorseful that she had expelled an innocent young man from the temple for a trivial reason. So she went to her sister to apologize to her. But Yuzuki was ignoring her sister, so Tsukuyo didn't want to give up because she chased her sister everywhere. And finally Yuzuki talked to her. She doesn't want to see her sister because her face reminds her of Akagame's, so Tsukuyo makes fun of her. The girl Yuzuki knew from the very beginning the plan that the girls had prepared, because it was Kiki who told her. Tsukuyo later apologized and said that a man should not live in a temple for girls. But Yuzuki said that she let him join because her mother was going to do the same. So they decided to go to Akagame in order to explain the matter to him. Meanwhile, Kiki comes. She said that Akagame has packed his things and has already left the temple. The sisters have become surprised by this information. I don't know why the girls are shocked by this news, even though they wanted to expel Akagame from the temple from the beginning. Except for Yuzuki, she was the only one who wanted him to stay here. Poor Akagame was feeling guilty about the incident that happened a few moments ago, so he decided to go to the police station in order to hand himself over to justice. It's very funny, but he always thought that way. When he checked in, he told the whole story to the officer, but the officer kicked him out of the headquarters and asked him not to come here again. He asks about the reason, but the reason is obvious. Then he decided to go to his house because there is no solution. And he actually went to the owner, but he found a new tenant had come to his house. He is asking about his things, but the owner said that he threw his things into the river, and now he has nowhere to go. So he went to one of the abandoned places. He began to think about his bad condition, how he ended up homeless because of a frivolous situation. He also thought about the temple and the girls. He thought the girls were fine because Yuzuki was there. He said she was a strong woman and he depended on her. But then he started thinking about negative things, so he punched himself in order to stop it. But he kept thinking, so he punched himself again. He doesn't know why he keeps thinking in a negative way, even though he meditated under the waterfall and also reached the stage of enlightenment. Then he began to think about his inability to achieve anything, because he could not repay the money, the value of which exceeds 20 million yen. But in the meantime, he is surprised by the presence of Ayaba Yuzuki. She asked him why he left the temple. He said that she was the one who asked him to, so she became angry and said that she meant to leave the bathroom and not the temple. She also told him that this problem can be solved by discussion. Nothing more, nothing less. Her eyes were shining and she said that the first rule in order to attain enlightenment is that a person does not have to live alone. Tsukuyo also came. She apologized to him because she had entangled him in a worthless trap. He also apologized to her for his actions, but she gave him a piece of paper in which he wrote the bill that he must pay. But the amount of money has risen because of that situation that happened earlier, and so he came back to the temple again. But Mia didn't like this, so she passed out. The girls Tsukuyo and Yuzuki decided to go in order to take a hot bath because of the rain that was falling over them a little earlier. But before that, Tsukuyo went to the refrigerator in order to get some juice. Then she went, but she left Akagame and Courage alone in the kitchen, and this girl is the sister of Yuzuki and Tsukuyo. So Akagame said that he would go in order to prepare dinner before the girls came out of the bathroom. But Courage wanted to help him prepare the food, and actually while preparing dinner, she said that he didn't know anything about Yuzuki's life, so he became very excited. He wants to know everything, so he said out loud that he wants to know everything about Yuzuki. So Courage began to look at him in a strange way, and indeed she had misunderstood, but he said that it was impossible for him to do this, and that's because he's a priest, and to do these negatives her punishment is very severe. But she said that following negative things is not a bad thing. He is shocked to hear this crazy sentence. She also asked him to go and see Yuzuki and Tsukuyo. He began to feel the danger that this girl possesses, so she said that she was joking with him no more and no less. All the things she said are just a joke in order to annoy Akagame. Then she said that her sisters have been acting stupidly since the moment Akagame came. She said that she loves her sisters when they act stupidly, so she thanked him for that and also said that she is glad that Akagame has finally returned to the temple. Then she went to open the bathroom door, but Akagame quickly went to stop her from doing that thing. But she moved away from the door, and so he opened the door. Of course, after he did this, the girls punished him severely. And now we don't know what will happen, because Mia was angry and said that the temple had become full of corruption because of Akagame. She was very nervous, so the girls started trying to calm her down. But she never gives up. She made a very difficult challenge to Akagame. If he loses this challenge, she will turn Akagame into a beautiful doll using scissors. I think everyone understands very well what is happening. Akagame will enter a difficult challenge at the expense of his manhood. He became shocked because this matter concerns his future. Courage, she does not understand what kind of punishment Akagame will face, so everyone ignored her stupid question. Yuzuki was also encouraging him not to give up in the fight that would happen between him and Mia. She asked him to rely on his fist during the fight. Everyone wishes him good luck in the fight. And he actually said goodbye to them and went to the venue of the match. And actually a few moments later, Mia comes, but she was feeling very angry because of the dislike towards Akagame. When he saw her, he started calling her by her first name, but she didn't want to, because she was introducing herself and her family and said that Akagame should respect her. She wanted him to tell her senpai. And actually he was listening well to this lecture. Really, he was agreeing to fulfill all her selfish requests. But she was like a monster that is difficult to tame. Because of the much anger resulting from seeing the calm that Akagame enjoys, she began to tell her whole life story. But he began to ignore her. Meanwhile, this girl said that she was the maid of Mrs. Mia. He began to ask about the kinship that unites them. So she said that she is her big sister. Mia screams loudly because she is the eldest of this girl. Then he started asking her to cancel this fight because there is no point in this nonsense. So she got angry and pulled out a samurai sword. He doesn't understand what exactly is happening. So she started telling the story of the old samurai, and she said that this fight will be a fight to the death. He doesn't want this to happen. So she cut off part of his hair very quickly. This means the beginning of the fight. He came to understand that this girl was really serious about this fight, because she was looking at him in a scary way. She also told him to prepare his sword because the next attack would be much stronger, and she actually pounced on him very quickly. He threw his sword because he wants to stop this attack with his hands. I don't know what is the thing that Akagame has in mind. He abandoned his weapon during the battle. The problem is that if he is defeated, he will lose his manhood, and this is something that should never be risked. She was attacking hard, and he also had the courage to repel the attack. But suddenly a situation occurs between them during the fight because of the maid. So Akagame could not control himself and actually countered the attack with his hands. But his hands countered to something else. Poor Mia, she became nervous because of the situation that happened in the fight a few moments ago. Her friend also called her a loser because she had been exposed to losing in the challenge. This means that Akagame has won, and this is very annoying for her. The maid wants to propose a punishment in order to punish Mia, so she brought a book. This book contains many severe punishments. So Mia became shy because she didn't know what exactly was going on here. She thought she was going to win the fight, and then she kicked Akagame out of the temple, but God was with Akagame. And now Mia has to give up. But suddenly Akagame said that he wanted something. Then he gestured towards Mia. He meant that book. But Mia had misunderstood, so she said that it was impossible, after which she immediately ran away. But in the meantime, Kagura was smiling in a strange way. I think she was planning for something else. At night, Akagame can't sleep because he has failed to reconcile Mia this day. Also, he is sad because he also failed to get the book of punishments. He closed his eyes, but suddenly he found Mia in front of him. She had come to settle the matter that happened in the fight, the samurai competition. She had suffered a loss, so she had to execute the challenge penalty. He doesn't know what's going on because it was all a misunderstanding. At the time, he wanted to make sure that this was a dream or not, so he threw a knock on the door and actually found Akagura shooting a video. So he finally understood everything. He started explaining everything to her. He said he meant that book. And now she understood it too, so she became shy because she was stupid, and then she quickly ran away. At that moment, Kagura went to him. She whispered in his ear. No one knows what she said to him. The poor thing was running fast. She doesn't know why she's stupid. She had to figure everything out from the beginning. So she decided to meditate and book herself, and actually went to the store in order to hide. But it was a surprise. Akagame was waiting for her because it was the evil Kagura who told him to go to the store. She wanted to escape, but the door was locked from the outside. Kagura was the one who locked it, also could not get out of the window. The girl Mia does not want to stay here, also he does not want to stay either, so they are looking for a way to get out of here. The problem is that they have forgotten their phones outside, so it will be impossible for them to get out now. so they have to wait here until tomorrow in order to get out. He started looking around and actually found a blanket, so he went to Mia in order to give her the blanket. But she was angry because she didn't want him to get any closer to her, and she also didn't want to touch a blanket that had been grabbed by a man. So Akagame put her on the floor and asked her to come and pick it up herself. Meanwhile, he started asking her about this strange table. She asked him to stop these questions, but then she answered him. But he was surprised by the answer, because this table is very serious and also it is about the Buddha. The atmosphere became a little turbulent between them, but she told her story. Her story is similar to Akagame's. She belongs to a very famous and wealthy family, but this family had a bad reputation like the Akemetsu family. When she was little, her mother used to tell her that she had to have 100 lovers. She didn't know the meaning, so she talked about this in front of her friends at school. As a result, she became lonely because all her friends abandoned her because of the thoughts she heard from her mother. But one day, a girl came to her and sat down with her. This girl is Kagura. She started laughing when she heard that Mia wants to have 100 lovers. She introduced her to religion, and also suggested that she go to the temple in order to start a new life and fix everything. And indeed she was going on the right path. But from the moment Akagame came, she began to behave strangely because those negative thoughts that she inherited from her family have returned to her mind again. Then when she completed the story, Akagame was crying because he was affected by this story. He said that he was also going through exactly the same problems as her. He said that he joined this temple for the same reason. They began to cry together. She began to say to herself that she had finally met the person who looked like her. That's fate. But she didn't want to. He also began to think about the same thing, but he was punching himself in order to drive away negative thoughts. The atmosphere becomes romantic. In the end, they decided that they would help each other solve their problems. But at the same moment, Kagura comes and opens the door. She said she heard everything. The next day, Kagura was filming Akagame and Kagura while they were doing some yoga exercises. But Yuzuki came. She got it wrong, so she asked them to pray for God to forgive them their sins. Then Yuzuki remembered an important thing. This is the means of marriage. She is going to marry a priest in order to run the temple. Kiki is leaving soon, and also the temple will be closed when Yuzuki graduates from high school. But if she gets married, the temple will continue to work, and now they have to get to the bus stop quickly, and they did go quickly, but to no avail. They arrived late. So Akagame rented a motorcycle, and she did, and they set off, but unfortunately the fuel ran out, so they moved forward. But they noticed a bus. She went quickly and also he went with her. But the problem, this is a truck and not a bus. She collapsed and said that it was impossible to save the temple. But he said that nothing is impossible. He asked her to put on a kimono because they were going to rent this truck while it was stopped at a red traffic light. She was reluctant because she felt a little ashamed, but nevertheless she carried out the plan. And now there is only half an hour left for the wedding date. And actually Akagame borrowed this truck. Then they went to the temple for the wedding date. A few moments later they entered that temple by truck, but in a stupid way as they jumped the truck over the wall. Then they hit the tree. The priest came to take the girl to the master. She was glad that she made it to the appointment on time, so she thanked Akagame for helping her solve this problem. He said that this is normal because they are friends. Then he asked her to go and said that there was no man in the world who could not fall in love with her. She started laughing. Then she quickly drove off with this priest. But he got in the van in order to wait for her. He wished her success in this task, but at the same time he was sad that he would not be able to live with her because she was going to get married. He was wishing her well and a good life, but suddenly he finds a strange woman sitting next to him. He started asking her about her identity, but she said that she should ask him, not him. She noticed the clothes that Akagame is wearing. It's a servant's clothes, so she asked him to clean the temple now and also said that he should stop wasting time. He didn't want that, so she forcibly took him for cleaning. Meanwhile, Yuzuki was introducing herself to the high priest. Also, he was happy to meet Yuzuki. He introduced himself to her and said that he is the third son in the Ryokoku temple and his name is Kiju Wan. Then he wanted to know why Yuzuki had proposed herself at such a young age. And actually she was frank in her answer. She said that she loves Mikazuki temple and also she loves her friends who live in that temple. Then she suggested to Kiju to visit that temple. Then she began to express how much she loves and is loyal to her friends. She said that she is completely confident that her friends are supporting her from afar at this moment. She looked out the window but noticed Akagame watching her from behind the window. So she became shocked and nervous because one of her friends is watching her, and as a result, she began to guess, is this person really Akagame, or is he just a clone made by her brain? He also started saying that he didn't want to look at Yuzuki when she was meeting another man. As a result of that, he started thinking in a negative way. But he started punching himself in order to stop it and also in order to expel all negative thoughts about Yuzuki. She didn't know what the hell was going on. Kiju found out that she was nervous, so he asked her to imagine her family by her side now. She can't because one of her friends is already watching her now. But in the meantime, Akagame discovers that Yuzuki is nervous because of him. He thinks that his presence at this moment causes a lot of stress, so he decided to hide in places in order for the marriage date to succeed. But at that moment, that priest is called out to him to hide in this place. But unfortunately, the marriage broker is sick now and cannot attend this interview. He is an important person and his job is to marry the parties. So this priestess identified Akagame as a matchmaker. The situation was so bad that Yuzuki was embarrassed and angry. Akagame also felt the same. But he started apologizing to Yuzuki for this thing, but then he started feeling energetic. He has to marry Yuzuki to this priest in order to solve the problem of closing the temple. So he was feeling excited and asked Yuzuki to get ready. Then he asked Kiju a question. The question is about where he will take his girlfriend on the first date between them. So Kiju said that he will take his girlfriend to the cinema in order to watch a movie. He said that he likes to watch movies alone, but it will be more fun while Yuzuki goes with him. She became happy that the meeting was going well. She looked at Akagame, but she became shocked. He was holding his heart because of the cinema hall. He began to imagine Yuzuki inside the cinema hall with Kiju. Those negative thoughts that he was trying to get rid of in order to become a good person have returned. But then he returned to normal, so he asked the priest again about the places he would go with Yuzuki on days off. So the priest said that the hot springs are the best place to relax, but Akagame began to look at him with a terrifying freshness. All because of the thoughts he was imagining. He really felt very angry. He was like a beast that was difficult to tame. He decided to forget all that, so he asked him again, what is the priest's plan after marriage? The priest said that he will have 10 children, he loves a big family. So Akagame fainted because of this interview, so they took him away from this place. Yuzuki was embarrassed by Akagame's stupid actions, so she apologized to Kiju. He said that the way she described her friends earlier was frank. He also said that he wished Akagame had not come here in order to interfere in this meeting. But he said that Akagame was worried about her no more and no less. He is a frank person because he does not lie in his feelings. But suddenly when Yuzuki heard this, she remembered herself when she was little. Her mother always told her that lying is a very bad thing. So she apologized to Kiju. He doesn't know exactly why, so she said she didn't really want to marry him. Then she remembered the words of her friend Kiki. She wants Yuzuki to prolong the engagement for 3 years, then she will cancel the engagement. Because after 3 years she will graduate from school, as a result of which the temple will last longer and will not be closed. After Kiju understood everything, he understands that Yuzuki did all this in order not to close the temple. She was apologizing to him, but then she knelt down in front of him and begged him to do her sermon, in order to give the temple some time. But the priest began to speak like a philosopher and said that Mikazuki Temple is a very old temple and needs a lot of maintenance, and as a result many people will be harmed because of it. He said that the person who decided to close that temple was thinking the same way. He began to make harsh words to her and said that Mikazuki Temple is never worth protecting. She tried to change his mind, but to no avail. He asked her to wake up from the illusion in order to accept reality. But at that moment Akagame comes. He also begs him for their help to run the temple, and also blames himself because he is the reason Mikazuki Temple got into that state because of his father's debts. But the priest began to look at Akagame with wonder and said that the closure of the temple is in his interests. All the debts that he has on him will disappear completely, and so Akagame will have freedom. Then Kiju is going to leave because it's over. The temple will be closed forever, but Akagame caught him. He said that the temple saved his life and Yuzuki's life, so he said that Mikazuki Temple really deserves protection. The priest has come to say that running the temple will never be an easy task. Yuzuki will suffer and also everyone who lives in the temple will suffer. It is not easy because Yuzuki will not be able to do it all alone. But Akagame said he would support her in all circumstances. But the matter turned quickly because the priest began to direct responsibility towards Akagame. He asked him to take care of her and start a family with her. Akagame must help Yuzuki all his life and everything. And of course Akagame swore to give happiness to her. She became shy because it became like a marriage contract between Akagame and Yuzuki. Then Kiju said to Yuzuki that he agreed to the engagement, but he would only give her his name. Then he left, so they thanked him for the help. The priest went to that priestess. She said she wanted him to convince Yuzuki to close the temple, but he said he found that boy interesting, so he changed his mind. But the problem is that this girl, she is the high priest of this temple and she has the title of Ayaba. It becomes really interesting. Meanwhile, Akagame and Yuzuki had arrived late at the bus station, so they went to the train station. But on the way, he began to think about that engagement. He became happy that Yuzuki would not marry that priest because the engagement was only in name, and as a result he would not leave the temple. She became shy, so she closed his eyes in order for him not to see her. She began to thank him for her help. But he saw her face, so he thought she had a cold or some disease. She started screaming and called him stupid, because the reason her face was red was because she loved Akagame. Then they arrived at the train station, but it was too late. The last train had already left a few moments ago, so he suggested that she return home by taxi. But there were never any taxis. The city was completely empty like a ghost town. But they looked around, and indeed they found one of the hotels. But the problem is that this is another kind of hotel, but there is no solution. He never wants to go there, but she suggested he go because there is no solution in front of them. And they really went, but she was joking with him in such a stupid way that he started bleeding. Then she asked him to go for a shower, and he really went to the bathroom, but he was thinking of a way to get out of this predicament. He doesn't want to get into trouble. Then when he went outside, he found Yuzuki acting in a strange way. She went to the bathroom, so he took the controller that she was holding. Then he turned on the TV, but he found a shocking surprise.
Oh, hell no!
She was watching bad things, so he started thinking about what that girl said about her sister. She was also nervous, but when she remembered that moment when Akagame said that he would support her in running the temple, she wanted to stay with him forever. But when she got out of the bathroom, she found Akagame in a strange state. He had tied himself up in order not to do something that he might regret in the future, so she closed his eyes and went to sleep. And so he started screaming for you to untie him because he can't stay up all night and he's in this state.